Jim and Cindy here from OUTAPocket, and today we're putting Sumo Springs on the van.
Jim tells me this should help with that kind of heart in your mouth feeling when you go around a sharp corner in the Blue Ridge Mountains and you feel like the van's going to fall off the cliff.
That should help because the way this van comes from the factory, you have your rear axle on the leaf springs, and there's a gap, and then there are these hard rubber bump stops. This Sumo Spring goes in that space so that when you're driving and you start to roll, it will gently compress this and hopefully take that feeling of your stomach kind of coming up into your mouth, soften that so it feels like a more normal ride.
Now, this is really yellow.
Yes.
Why?
It's a yellow Sumo Spring. They do come in 3 colors, blue, black, and yellow. Yellow is the heaviest duty, black is more of a medium duty, and blue, light duty, didn't really matter. We decided to go with the yellow, heavier duty, because our primary use case is driving the van on trips with a full load of water, bike racks, and everything else. We considered the black, and that might make sense if you primarily use the van unloaded. But we decided to go with the yellow. The trade-off will be when we're driving the van around town or whatever, it could be a little bit of a stiffer ride because it's a heavier duty spring.
All right. Well, in this video, we're going to go over why we picked the springs we did. We're going to actually install them in the van, and at the end, we're going to go for a ride to see if it feels any different.
I really think this is going to be an easy install.
Yeah, right. Does it involve power tools?
No.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
fine.
Not many tools at all. You'll see. Should be easy. Should be quick. You're going to come along for the ride.
All right. Well, let's get to it.
Let's do it. Here are the parts and tools I've assembled for this project. These are the Sumo Springs made by Sumo Springs. We got the yellow ones. They come with 2 spacers, which you may need to use to get that height the way you want it. These will replace the bump stops that come on the van from the factory. Also comes with these bolts, 2 different lengths. A hammer, 17mm socket with an extension, big screwdriver, work light, jack stand, and a heavy-duty jack to give me some workspace under there when the time comes. There are lots of other companies that make springs that look like this. They're even colored yellow. If you look on Amazon, there's all sorts of options. I didn't want to take a chance with a potential counterfeit or other brand, so we ordered the true Sumo Springs type of Sumo Spring from E-Trailer in this case to make sure we got what we wanted. This is the existing factory bump stop right here. So this is going to come off. So before I jack the van up at all, I need to try to loosen this. And I also want to measure the gap between this. So measure how big the space is underneath it. Okay, that's about right. Okay, so this screwdriver, the widest part, is how much space there is between the existing bump stop and the axle underneath. Now to loosen these, I need to take a big screwdriver and a hammer. I need to get this screwdriver in this notch. There's some notches around this thing. And I have to try to get this to start turning and loosening. Like that. Now my plan is to put this jack underneath the rear tow hitch, which is bolted right to the frame in the back, and just give myself a little workspace by lifting the body up so that I can get the old bump stops out and the new springs in. I'm not going to lift this up off the ground, just try to add a little space between the axle and the body where those bump stops are. You don't really want to jack the vehicle off the ground this way, but to give myself a little workspace should be fine. A little more. All right, and I'll put this jack stand in for safety. I don't exactly know the process, but I'm going to keep trying to work this looser and looser until I can get it off. I have a little more space to work with now, which is nice. I think I have it loose enough. Yes. Can't get it by hand now. Okay, that was a lot of turning with the screwdriver to get to this point. More than I expected. It didn't help that the spare tire was in the way. There, it's off. It was a little messier than I'd hoped because we had the van undercoated before winter to keep the rust down with mineral oil, so there's still a bunch of that under there. but I'm measuring the factory bump, and it's about 5.5 inches. And we know there was an existing gap under it, approximately the size of the widest part of the screwdriver, which is a little over a 1/2 inch. So I end up with a little over a 6-inch gap was there, the way it was set up with the factory sitting on the ground. Now if I measure the new Sumo Spring, that's just barely over 5 inches. If I add one spacer, that's just barely over 6 inches. That seems like that's going to be pretty much the closest match to replace this and fill in that little gap just about, but not really go over the gap that was there before. So I'm going to go with one spacer, which means the shorter bolts when we put this back in. Okay, this comes with long bolts and short bolts. We're using one spacer, so we'll use the short bolt, and it comes with thread lock, but we'll use that at the end. It looks like what we do is we put this nut in there first, like that, if we can. There we go. Put the washer on the short bolt. This goes through there, like that, and then this screws in here first. So you like pre-assemble this. I have a 17mm socket. So you pre-assemble this with the one spacer first, and then you put this whole assembly into the vehicle using the thread lock second. This is a deep socket, so I just had to push that bolt up further so that I could get this spacer on there. There we go. And we'll tighten that up good. That it's threaded into that nut. All right, so that one's ready to install. There, getting the hang of it now. So I've wiped down the floor of the van there where it's going to go in. Just see if I can get this started. Come on, there we go. Okay. Well, it goes in a lot easier than it came out. Okay. Feels like that's about as tight as I'm gonna get it. That side's done. Well, we're on day 2 now. In the process of loosening up this other one yesterday, it was spinning really hard and then kind of snapped and it busted the weld that holds the nut up inside the frame, right? There's a little groove to get in there right here. So it turns out this is fairly common. I've read up about it now, that this does happen to a lot of people. The only option really is to cut that bolt off up there very carefully, because these are propane line. That's a propane line. So get a multi-tool in there, oscillating multi-tool I'm going to try to use with a little metal head, and cut that off. We can get the old nut out and hopefully figure out how to get a new nut in there. Okay, Cindy, I was able to get that nut behind there. I'll explain what I did in a minute, but I'm able to tighten this now, which I'm going to do, and get the second one on with that new nut. That's the idea. Anyway. Okay, yeah, it's tightening. All right, I think we got it this time. And I did put Loctite on there. Just get it as tight as I can. Okay, I think that's it. All right, let me crawl out of here and I'll explain the trick I used. So here was the old rusted nut that used to be welded inside the frame like that I cut off. So the trick was how to get the new nut in that groove above the spot where the new bolt had to go. What I did is I used this magnetic holder, and it's flexible, so I was able to get it in there, and I stacked 2 nuts on top of each other like that, which is about the height of that channel. Then when I slid it in there, when I pushed that bolt up, it had pressure against the top because of that second nut, and it was able to turn and catch. So once it caught, I pulled this out. This nut was in there. And then I had this plastic like wedge you might use on the side of a door. And I slid this in there and kept pushing and pushing until it tightened up against that nut so the nut couldn't turn. And then I was able to completely tighten that Sumo Spring. So that's how I got the new nut in there. This thing is still in there, the other one. It's fine, won't hurt anything. But then, yeah, I was able to tighten that up into that nut, and now it's installed. Well, Cindy, we've got him in. We're taking our first test drive on a bumpy local dirt road.
Here we go.
I mean,
I haven't felt anything different yet.
I haven't either.
I haven't gone very far.
No,
either.
There's about, I don't know, 1/3 of an inch gap between the leaf spring and the new Sumo Spring. So we're not really going to feel anything until we hit a bump big enough to close that gap.
But
And
it's
we don't
mud
have-
season, so we should hit it pretty soon.
It is. And we don't have a lot of weight in the van, so this will be more of like the lightweight
Exactly.
configuration. So I'll say it's driving great. We've gone over some bumps.
We have.
I'm not feeling like it's super stiff. You know,
Which
they're not
surprises
massive
me.
bumps. Gonna take some corners up here. We'll see how that feels. Oh, that feels good.
That wasn't
I
bad.
just took that corner a little
You
tight.
didn't even like let me know.
No,
I like it.
I feel like it's got a little more support. It
I
doesn't have that
agree.
huge, like, sinking
I'm
feeling
holding on to this.
that you're gonna tip over.
No, you really don't.
No. So
You
that
got rid of
so
that
far, so
swing.
good. Yeah.
I don't feel where I am anything different as far as bounces unloaded, but I definitely feel something different from the swaying back and forth
Yeah,
as we
I do
take
too.
corners.
That's definitely the
Huge
biggest
for me.
impact.
Wow.
It was a harder project than I expected.
Yes, it was. But
Lessons learned.
it involved a
We
power tool.
We got a power tool out of it. You got a power tool out
I'm
of it.
very happy.
It was a little sketchy cutting next to that gas line.
Yes, but you had control over
I
it.
did,
And
I
have
did.
to say, the oscillating multi-tool
Yeah.
is the preferred tool for that because other ones may not have that kind of control when you're right there next to those gas lines.
That's
You
right.
don't want things going around.
I've heard of people using a Sawzall. I definitely didn't want to use a Sawzall
No.
near that gas line.
No.
For people that are going to do this project, definitely go buy 2 nuts beforehand. They are M10 1.25 thread metric nuts to go on that for this van. Our van, we only bought it 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
already one of them was rusted so much that it broke off.
Yeah.
So it's very likely people will break these. The other thing is get some good penetrating oil, and you can spray up in that channel. Where
Ahead
that
of
bolt
time.
is beforehand.
A day or
Yeah,
two ahead of time,
exactly.
and you might be
Spray.
able to
maybe you
manage
can
that so
loosen
it won't
Yeah, to
hold
reduce.
so much.
That's
Yeah.
right. But all in all, aside from it being really messy, difficult,
Well, messy because of our undercoating.
yeah, true. That's
But
the
it
main
was,
reason.
you did struggle. Getting the springs loosened up and off took way longer than we expected. It was a lot of little hits, and the hammer kept falling off of the screwdriver.
Yeah.
And that was annoying.
So it's not as easy of an upgrade as I thought it would be.
No.
I think
it was
it's
kinda
still
tedious.
doable by people, but when you break that nut, it becomes a lot harder.
Yeah.
But I think I would call it a success.
I think it's a huge success.
If you like this video,
Feel free to like and subscribe. And as always, drop us any kind of comments. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear what your reactions are and your experiences with this.
thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.